the empire that could have pulled off such an extraordinary feast: J. Lyons and Company. By 1906, Lyons was the undisputed king of British catering, a firm that came to represent the very best of Britishness. It was an enterprise that not only provided food and drink to all the grand events, the annual garden parties at Buckingham Palace and the Wimbledon lawn tennis championships, but also supplied millions of families across the empire with affordable and high-quality packets of tea, cartons of coffee, loaves of bread, and an endless supply of Swiss rolls and other sweet delights. Perhaps most famously, Lyons also revolutionized the nation's eating habits with a chain of much-loved tea shops, from Glasgow in the north to Bournemouth in the south, which were open and accessible to all and were staffed by a small army of loyal nippies. In 1906, Lyons was thriving. Yet, as the century progressed, the company would occupy a far more important position, creating brands that would become recognizable the world over: Lyons Corner Houses, Lyons Made Ice Cream, Lyons Cakes. They ran a chain of lavish hotels, such as the Cumberland and Regent Palace in London, the Commodore in Paris, the Alpha in Amsterdam, and many others. Their factory produced 1/7 of the bombs dropped by the Allies on Germany during the Second World War. They helped to bring women into the workforce in vast numbers and ensured that their eateries were available to all and excluded none. Lyons would also own a list of mega brands such as Tetley Tea, Baskin-Robbins, and Dunkin' Donuts, bringing American tastes to the UK and Europe. They even developed the world's first business computer. Lyons was woven into the fabric of British life, a firm that was a favourite of the royal family and of millions of ordinary Britons. Lyons shaped British taste, and in many ways, over a tumultuous century, Britain itself, although few, if any, of Lyons' many millions of customers knew how the company started. And almost no one now remembers the name of the man who began it all, a Hebrew teacher who escaped persecution in Europe, finding opportunity in the slums of East London, a refugee desperate to better himself in a nation that was not always welcoming to outsiders. I have always been fascinated by my family's past, but for a long time I only really knew about my father's side, the Alexanders. Growing up, I knew that the Alexanders had fled Germany for Britain in the 1930s, forced to start again with nothing. We spent most of our time with my father's family. Theirs was the story I knew best, one of violence and sacrifice, but also one of duty and perseverance and love. Of my mother's side, the Salmons and Glucksteins, however, I knew very little, apart from a few odd names. On a shelf in my parents' living room sat a dark green book that contained my mother's family tree, going back generations. I used to spend hours leafing through its pages, examining its charts, awed by the sheer number of people mentioned, each carefully labelled with a date of birth, a date of marriage, and a date of death. Beneath flowed the names of their children and their children's children, the branches reaching ever wider. The names were strange to me, sounding funny when I read them aloud: Montague, Barnet and Isidore, Helena, Adelheid and Bertha. And at the very top of the family tree was a single name: Lehmann Gluckstein, born 1787, died 1859. My grandfather's grandfather's grandfather. When I was 9 years old, my mother's father, Sam Salmon, took me out for lunch at the Carvery in Marble Arch. I remember being awed by the plush red velvet chairs, the perfect white linen that covered the tables, and the sparkling chandeliers hanging from the dining room's gold and silver-painted ceiling. Around us, men in pleated chef's hats and starched white jackets pushed carts piled high with more food than I had ever seen. Oval platters of roast lamb, chicken and beef, and later chocolate gâteau, cheesecake, apple strudel and pear flan. "You can eat as much as you want," my grandfather told me. He owned the restaurant, after all. Recently, I was walking through central London with my teenage daughter, also called Sam. From Buckingham Palace, we strolled through Green Park and then past the Ritz Hotel and the Royal Academy to Piccadilly Circus. I pointed to a tall building that